Hello, everyone. This is John Jenkins, and I'm bringing you the fourth installment of my "I Will Get Rich, I Will Be Rich" series. And I'm looking through all of the books that I read in 2016, and I'm talking about what the book was about. Did I like it? Who's the author? When did I read it? So I ended in uh, on number 14. I started and finished 47 books that year, and so I ended on number 14. And 14 was 24 Essential Lessons for Investment Success, for Investing Success by William J. O'Neill. So the next one was Night Watch by Linda Fairstein, a very appealing book. Um, I read it from uh, April 18th, 2016 to April 24th, 2016. So it took me a week, to read the book. If you add in the 18th, um, very appealing book. Um, it was the first book I ever read by Linda Fairstein, and it was a mystery book. I like to say that it was the first mystery book I ever read, but a lot of books that are not technically mysteries have mystery elements in them. Like most books, even a book like Heat Storm by Richard Castle, the book that I just finished yesterday. Even that book has mystery elements in it because you need mystery. You need mystery in all genres. Uh, you need mystery in all genres in fiction and nonfiction in order to hold the suspense. So, and in addition to that, this book that I read, Night Watch by Linda Fairstein, was not in the mystery section. It was in the fiction section. So I've never actually taken a book. I've never checked out a book that was in the mystery section, but Night Watch was a mystery novel, even though it was not in the mystery section. So, the book, I tend to not like books where there's a lot of fornication, because I don't know. I don't know why. Maybe it's just that. Maybe it's just my Christian brainwashing or whatever. But I tend to not like books where the main character is always fornicating. But in spite of that, I mean, this was a very appealing book. The suspense was high. It was very interesting. Um, they went to interesting places. They did interesting things, and they had a goal in life. Um, Very appealing book. I loved it, and so out of the three levels, bad, good, and great, I would say this is a great book. If you want to read about, if you like murder mysteries, I don't want to give away the plot, but if you like murder mysteries, you're gonna love Linda Fairstein. And I'm definitely going to read some more books by Linda Fairstein because she's a very good writer. And yeah, that's it. That's all I have to say for this book. I'm trying not to spoil these books. I really want to talk about them, but I can't spoil them. So the next one, number 16, uh, Breakthrough by Jim Murphy. And when I read that Breakthrough by Jim Murphy, I immediately thought of another book that I read back in 2015. Or let's see, I read the book. Yeah, I read the book in 2015. It was called Breakthrough Inc. and it's a business book. Uh, Let me see. Uh, Yeah, I don't know where I put it, but yeah, I don't know where I put the book, but when I read Breakthrough by Jim Murphy, I was thinking of Breakthrough Inc. by Herb Rubenstein and Tony Grundy. I just checked it out a second time so I could read through it again. But that one's a business book. This one, Breakthrough, is a is basically it's a Black History book, and basically this guy it tells a story about how uh, a black guy performed the first heart surgery, and people the a black guy invented heart surgery. Basically, that's the topic. That's the topic of the book. And if you go through the internet, there's all these asterisks next to black inventions. They say, oh, yeah, this was really invented by a white man. Oh, we're just pretending that black people invented stuff to make them feel better. But if you read the book, it was actually pretty clear. Uh, you know, this black guy, you this black guy was a doctor when it was basically illegal for black guys to be doctors. He became a doctor anyway. Um, this was in the Jim Crow era, and he developed a method of of curing a condition called blue babies. And I believe blue babies was when your 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 heart was not pumping oxygen into your blood, and you would basically suffocate from the inside because your blood had no oxygen in it. And so this black guy developed a method for curing blue baby sickness. And at the time, a lot of babies were dying of this. So this guy developed the first heart surgery, which uh, cured blue baby sickness. But the problem was that he was the one who invented it. He invented it by performing heart surgeries on dogs. So, as a black man, he was not allowed to perform surgery on people. He was only allowed to perform it on dogs. And using the dogs, he developed a method that was eventually used on humans, but he was not allowed to test his theory on humans because he was black. So, with all this asterisk stuff that they keep bringing up, all this asterisk stuff about how blacks never invented anything, they were all invented by white men. Well, if you look into the actual history, these inventions weren't created by black men. It's just that uh, the Jim Crow laws prevented them from legally taking credit for their inventions. So the asterisk it goes both ways. You know, on the one hand, technically they're not the inventors, but on the other hand, the reason why they're not the inventors is because they were legally precluded from ever being given credit for their inventions. So, yeah, that's the thrust of that book. I did not spoil it. Well, I did spoil it a little bit, but there's a really good photo in there of they had some good photos in there of lynchings, and basically, the entire town would get together. There's one photo I believe uh, the entire town was standing on a bridge, and I think they had hung a black mother and her son right next to each other underneath the bridge, and everybody was the whole white community was standing on top of the bridge, and they were all smiling, waving to the camera and stuff like that. Very good pictures, and yeah, so pick that book up if you're into Black history, you know. And next one, Steve Martini, Guardian of Lies. This was the first. Steve Martini book that I ever read, and the reason why I picked it up was the cover. If you see the cover of Steve Martini's books, they're so appealing. They're they have so much maturity. There's so much action. There's so much um, high fidelity, high resolution, high quality. They just really. When I saw the book cover, it reminded me of my younger days when I used to live. When I lived in Humboldt Park the first time, not the second time, over on the west side, and it reminded me of that whole. And also when I lived on the south side, and I would just walk from 4700 South all the way down to downtown, and all the strange little enclaves that you see in the city. Uh, it's like once you start walking and you get maybe like an hour into it, out of a 2 hour walk, or out of a 3 hour walk, you start to notice like the cars, all the curbs, all of the different windows and stuff like that. But you focus more intently. You break it down to its component parts. Basically, I like photography that brings me back to memories of my own life. So that's why I picked up the book, and it was very entertaining. Um, you know, it had a sort of it had uh, a communist Russia type uh, theme to it, and that was a little bit, how should I say, annoying, but it was very like, I wouldn't say it was realistic, but it was very enthralling. It was very, not so much entertaining, but it was very uh, it really played with your emotions, and it helped me to really see things, for what they were. And so I was introduced to the recurring character in Steve Martini's books, which is Paul Madriani. And the other Steve Martini book I read this year has Paul Madriani as the main character. So he's a lawyer. Both Steve Martini and Paul Madriani. So you know, Steve Martini writes about what he knows. He used to be a lawyer, and yeah, and so that is Guardian of Lies. I read it from April 30th to May 7th. So April has 30 days in it, so that would be 8 days total if you add in the 30th. So it took me 8 days to read that book, and I was probably, the book wasn't that long, so I probably had some sort of appointments during that time. That's why it took me 8 days. Normally, a book that size would probably take me 6 days, you know. And this is the last book I'm going to talk about today, which is Stupid Black Men by Larry Elder. Oh, so Guardian of Lies, I give that. I have to say it's a great book because it inspired me to read more. Another Steve Martini Paul Madriani book, which I'll get into on my next series. The other Steve Martini book I read was called Blood Flag, and it was released in 2017, I believe, either late 2016 or early 2017. So, yeah. So the last book I'm going to talk about is Stupid Black Men by Larry Elder. I read it from May 9th to May 13th. So that would be 5 days if you add in the ninth. And, you know, it's not as good as it's not as good as I remembered it when I read it the first time. There's one quote in the book that I was particularly interested in, but I used to uh, Larry Elder was my favorite black writer until I discovered Thomas Sowell and Walter Williams. You know, uh, nowadays I see Larry Elder as being like a mini Walter Williams. He's not as good of a writer as as those other two. I really don't remember most of what I read in the book. One thing that one thing that stood out to me one thing that stood out to me is the fact that Larry Elder always castigates black people, which I don't have a problem with, but he always castigates black people for their criminality, their irresponsibility, uh, uh, all this other stuff, as well like childbirth. But he himself has been uh, at the police station before. I believe he had to he had to spend 3 days at the police station. I believe it was because a police officer pulled him over. A police officer pulled him over. I think it was for jaywalking, and he, mouthed off to the police officer. So the police officer locked him up at the police station for I think 3 days. And so yeah, that was interesting to find that out. Uh, well, what did I read? What did I learn from the book? Um, well, it's so ingrained in my psyche right now that I don't really see it as being anything special. But what I learned from the book is that well, what I learned is that black people really are the most successful people in history. You know, and this book was written at the time that Barack Obama was running for president. It was perfect timing. You know, uh, uh, black people went from less than 200 years ago, black people were farm animals. Less than 200 years ago, black people were considered by the greatest minds in the world to be nothing more than farm animals. And at the time Larry Elder wrote this book about 260, 270, I'm sorry, 160 to 170 years later, after being declared not even human by our own country, uh, we had this black man being president of the country. That is the greatest leap of advancement in world history. And I came to that conclusion a few years after reading Larry Elder's book for the second time. I read it once when I was in college, but I don't think I finished it back in college. I finished it in 2016, and yeah, so yeah. Um, uh, that's all I remember. I could definitely read it again and look it up, look up some stuff from it when I have the time. But yeah, that's it for that one. So yeah, it's been 21 minutes, and I really don't want to make this video too long. So I'm gonna go. Next book is going to be Reinvented Comics by Scott McCloud, and that's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah. So have a nice day and goodbye.